Super Gulp Part 3.
Number 5 for me, one of the films that most people have towards the very top of their list. It's definitely one of the best in the MCU, Captain America Winter Soldier. This is the best action film of all of the MCU. Some of the best, like 3 or 4 of the best action scenes, hands down, across every single one of these 21 films we're talking about today. The best action scenes in all of the MCU are in this movie. At least probably 4 of them are in there. It's the kinetic action I'm looking for, the visceral action that I'm looking for, and that's what we get out of this one. But I just love the storytelling, the tone, that they still have some humor in the film, so it feels like an MCU film, but ramped up the tone with a darker and more serious feel to it. The political intrigue that's there in the film is a lot of fun. It's so exciting. The score is so good in that one, really gets your blood going. The Winter Soldier is handled perfectly in that film. Like, it has nothing to say. We don't need to know anything about him. He's just a badass who you're afraid to see show up and kill somebody. Gotta love me some Winter Soldier at number 5.
Good one. Coming in at number 5 for me is the original Marvel's Avengers. Really fun movie. This was that first holy shit moment in the MCU that they actually did it. The ending's great. It's just poppy cinematic fun thrown in your face, watching all these people fight. Some of the cool camera work where it's jumping from one superhero to the next. Still didn't feel like there's any stakes. The villains were nothing, didn't care. But this movie, I say it a lot, the villains aren't the purpose. And yeah, they weren't the point of this movie. The point of this movie is to get the team together, establish that we're going to have a Thanos-ish sort of looming in the background for however many more years. So it did its job. It was great. Joss Whedon crushed it. I know he was just jizzing himself every day on set because he's a big comic book writer, comic book fan. And it shows in this movie. It's very comic booky. From the outfits, which were ridiculous, like keeping Captain America in the most goofy costume he's had in any of these movies was brilliant. It made sense because everyone just popped in this movie so well. First Avengers comes in at number 5 for me.
Coming in at number 4 is the third Avengers Infinity War for me. It truly is the culmination of all of these stories actually working together and coming together, where there's plot lines that you could care less about that seemed uninteresting leading into that film, but within the context of that movie, it works. Every relationship that's on display, I'm interested in, I'm invested in. I love the way that it groups certain people together. They do a great job of having these various little adventures for the groups to go on and keep us interested. The humor is still there. It's one of the funniest MCU movies, I think. It has everything. It's got action, it's got humor, it's got drama. It has everything that makes it a Marvel product, but it excels. Infinity War coming at number 4 for me.
Number 4 for me is the original Iron Man. This is the movie that started it all. This is the movie that had constant production troubles. No one could come up with a script that worked. So it was really nice to see how this came together. I've heard stories about people on the production crew that were sending texts out to people going, this movie's fucked. It's never going to get made. This is such a mess.
Was that Terrence Howard doing that?
Talk about rewatchability. There's not much going on in this movie except him tinkering, and that's my favorite stuff about Tony Stark is when he's tinkering. That stuff is awesome, and that's the first Jarvis, and like Jarvis is so great. Pepper Potts is not just a throwaway stupid character. She goes toe-to-toe with Tony. She really has a lot of depth in that first movie. She's not just a love interest. In fact, she's not a love interest at all. There's hints, but that's not her character she's playing. I love the opening scene of this movie, that set piece in the cave with the character who became so important in his life, who he never makes any fucking mention of again. You gotta give praise to Iron Man and Jon Favreau for sure for starting all of this. So, number 4 for me.
Moving on to number 3 for me. That's going to bring us to Thor Ragnarok. An introduction of Taika Waititi to the MCU. What a great voice to come to the MCU. I hope he gets another opportunity to make another movie. The use of music in some of those scenes is a lot of fun. The visuals are great. It's able to work outside of the MCU's template to a little degree, and interjecting the Taika Waititi humor in this film that's a little different than the normal MCU humor, but it totally works. All the characters he brings, the Jeff Goldblum, Taika himself playing Korg or whatever, Rachel House, all these cast of characters that he brings to this movie that ramp up the humor to a different degree than we've seen in the MCU, but it still works. And also this story informs a lot going forward. With it finally made the Thor character interesting and relevant, and everything we've seen moving forward from Thor Ragnarok has made that character so much more enjoyable on screen. And I think a lot of that comes to what Taika did with the character in Ragnarok. I love this movie so much. It's so funny. It works on a lot of different levels within the MCU and just stands out as something unique. And please give us more Taika Waititi in the future.
So coming in at number 3 for me is Avengers Infinity Space. Infinity Space.
I gotta add that to my list.
Infinity Space is the best action scene in the MCU history. If you don't know what we're talking about, just click on our YouTube page below and look for the link that says Infinity Space. It's amazing. No, Infinity War is my third favorite movie. I agree with you. The Russo brothers kind of bring back that kinetic energy in some of the action stunts, even though they've had to change the whole philosophy on how action's done, because now it's people flying, it's wizards, it's aliens, it's spaceships, as opposed to just two guys parkouring and shit. And they handled it so well. But forget about the action. The juggling act of this movie and the pacing of this movie is so good. Like, you don't have to call these guys like masterful directors and they make this beautiful art films. They took a lot of characters and a lot of situations and a lot of plots and subplots, and they really made it work, where nothing feels stretched. No scenes feel rushed. There's a couple characters who are shortchanged, but I think that's because there's this other one coming that's going to maybe give them more to do. But man, I was so impressed with how they just utilized the characters and how they would jump. You wouldn't see Tony Stark for 30 minutes, and then there'd be a scene with him, and then you wouldn't see Thor for 40 minutes, and there'd be a scene with him. When everyone's on screen, they feel like it's their movie. My biggest thing of this movie is how well it's paced. It's nearly 3 hours, and I could have kept watching this for another 2 hours. So Avengers Infinity War is my third favorite Marvel movie.
Number 2 for me is the original Avengers film. This just worked for me. Going through the setup with each film for the initial 3 or 4 characters, bringing all them in, and I guess getting the original 6, as you would call it, it just worked for me. That film worked on every level. I find it to be really entertaining, really funny. The chemistry of the characters finally coming together, because that's where really everyone finally meets each other, is on the boat scene. Funny, entertaining, building to an exciting conclusion in the film, bringing all these characters together for the first time in a really great way. It just works. Joss Whedon, his dialogue in that film just works so well. Him being such a fan of superheroes, it really shows. It comes through. He gives them all great superhero moments in the film. Everybody gets their time to shine. So yeah, Avengers, the first Avengers film, just is everything that you want out of the MCU's template, and done perfectly.
Thor Ragnarok is number 2 for me. It's a thrilling adventure completely, but its biggest strength to me is its ability to finally take the character of Thor and show us what an absolute fucking goofy character it really is. This movie embraces that, and everything Taika Waititi has built around the Thor character helps complement who Thor is. It's Jack Kirby illustrations at its very best, with the colors. Sakaar is like this just trash planet, but it's beautiful and it pops and it's colorful and it's funny. And all the supporting cast, like you said, Rachel House, Taika Waititi playing Korg. I just love all these characters, and Thor finally matters in his own movie, and we're following him on an adventure that is fun and exciting and has like stakes, but it's not like overly boring. It's like the stakes in Ragnarok are 10 times higher than they are in the Dark World, but it doesn't feel as dour. It feels just like a total blast of comic book thrown at you on screen. I like Thor now. It's like it's amazing that my top couple picks are ones that I never would have thought would be where they are. It's just because of one entry that changed it all for me. Thor Ragnarok is the funniest movie in the MCU. It's one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. It's so much fun. Like you said, give Waititi the keys to make more of these fucking goofy cosmic adventures.
Brings us to our number 1. My favorite of the MCU. So you could say it was all downhill right from the start, because my favorite MCU movie was Iron Man, the very first entry in the MCU. Even before there was a thing called an MCU, it was just a couple guys trying to get their career on track. Jon Favreau trying to make a name as a director, and Robert Downey Jr. trying to get off smack. And they did such a good job of that, didn't they? I fucking love Iron Man. It's, in my opinion, it's the most rewatchable of all of the MCU. It is the only film of all of these MCU films. Jon Favreau did such a great job of directing this film. Who knew he had it in him to be able to bring this tone that has stuck with the MCU and worked so well in its favor across 20 movies that he kind of invented, I think, at least for the MCU. The balance of action, comedy, and heart in that first film. I don't think they've ever been able to quite capture that same balance. They have certain elements, they have the action and the humor without the heart.
It was the template to start it, yeah.
But I think that the heart of that character, Tony Stark, is not just the greatest character in the MCU, but he's one of the best characters in all of cinema. And Robert Downey Jr. deserves all the credit. Maybe not all the credit, because you have Jon Favreau writing the screenplay, but there was just magic in that first film that they haven't really been able to capture again, in my opinion, where it's trying to make us believe that this superhero could exist in the world that we live in. That he didn't have any special superhero powers, that he built a suit for himself, that with the tech and the technology of Stark Industries, it was believable that this suit could come to be and that a person could operate it in the way that he did. Yes, it's still a movie. You know, I don't believe it 100% that all these are real things, but there's just something about the way that first movie plays out that keeps it grounded in a way that made it make sense in the world that we live in. I love Iron Man. I've always loved Iron Man as my favorite. I don't know that any MCU movie is going to be able to beat Iron Man because it has too much baggage going into every movie at this point. And Iron Man was just fresh and interesting and just handled in a way that other superhero movies had not pulled off up to that point, in my opinion.
I knew when I saw Derek Lutz on screen for the first time that he was going to be Iron Man. Derek Lutz from Back to School. Okay, so without further ado, and obviously my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe film is Captain America, The Winter Soldier. This movie blew me away when I saw it in the theater. I saw it a few times in the theater because I kept taking people to go see it. This was a character I was not interested in at all because I didn't really care for his first solo movie all that much, like we said. And in the Avengers, he comes off a little hokey. Man, is he really coming to his own as Captain America in this movie. Holy shit. Aside from just that opening scene of him on that whatever the fuck it's called, that cruiser ship, that's the point in the movie where they punch you in the mouth and they go, this is not the Captain America from the other two movies. Up until that point, you did not know the extent of his powers. Yeah, you saw him like throw a motorcycle and stuff, but this one they just go bam when he's knocking people off that boat, and they give him all this new kind of martial arts that you haven't really seen him use before either, and he's so fast and swift, and you're like, holy fuck, this is basically Superman who can't fly. At its core, this movie, and it starts out at the very beginning, this movie is about friendship. This movie is about Captain America meeting a new friend in Sam Wilson, and how their relationship contrasts his relationship with Bucky, where he's kind of saying goodbye to the past. Captain America's saying goodbye to the past. He's saying goodbye to Bucky, who is his friend, who is bigger than him and more cunning than him and better looking than him, going through their life together. Now he's the Bucky character, and he's taking in someone like Sam, who's going to be loyal as a dog to him forever. And it's interesting how that works out, because then you have the full circle effect where Bucky comes back into the picture as the Winter Soldier, and that reveal, there's a lot of people that didn't see that coming. There's a lot of people that didn't even realize who Bucky was. But it works so well, and there's not a single action scene in this movie that's not just heart-pounding and amazing. And that Henry Jackman score, it's very unconventional. It just uses a lot of noise and sound effects almost that seem like they just are playing in your own head if you were going through something in a crazy action scene like this. It also gives Black Widow her first ever really time to shine. She's got her own style of fighting and her own way of doing things, and they bring her into the fold with a lot of secrets. And Nick Fury at the beginning, Nick Fury having the best opportunity to do anything in these movies. He does in this one. He gets one of the coolest action scenes in all of the MCU. This is a rewatchable movie to me. It's not just the action that makes it my number one movie, though I feel it's the best action movie of the entire Marvel films. I just love caring about Captain America, and I never thought that was possible. And yeah, Captain America the Winter Soldier is totally came out of left field. Did not know what this movie was going to do to me, and It was one of my favorite movies of 2014. Love Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That is my number one Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. I gotta piss.
Man, you gotta do what I did. Take care of that on set.
We drink your cinema.